anyone have any questions? Moving on to J, approve professional service agreement with Johnson plus Bailey Architects, PC, for the design of Fire Station 41. Does anyone have any questions? Moving on to K, approve proposal from Burris Thompson and Associates to conduct a compensation study. And again, this is pretty straightforward. Any questions? Going on to L, approve award terms and conditions agreement with the United States Department of Treasury regarding the American Rescue Plan Act funds. And this is just like it sounds. It's just an approving an agreement for the ARPA funds. Any questions about that? Moving on to M, approve master customer agreement with Motorola Solutions Incorporated for the computer-aided dispatch project in the police department. Is there any questions? Seeing none, moving on to new business. First reading ordinance 2021-23. An ordinance to amend the City of Laverne zoning ordinance by changing the official zoning map for tax map 14-0 Group A parcels 5.01 and portions of parcels 6 and 7 consisting of approximately 2.5 acres located at the north end of Humble Drive and the rear of 1517 and 1519 New View Street from an R3 high-density residential zoning district to an I2 heavy industrial zoning district. This received an unfavorable recommendation from the Planning Commission on July 27, 2021. A public hearing will be held on September 7th at 6:30 on this. Does anyone have any questions about this? I know Planning Commission discussed this for several months with the applicants, and ultimately an unfavorable recommendation was recommended. But
What was the reason?
well, I don't believe a specific reason was stated at Planning Commission, but I can tell you, at least for me at Planning Commission, we had some concerns, if I'm remembering correctly. It was about nonconformity and basically we're not supposed to make more nonconforming lots. Alderman Coates, do you want to speak a little bit about that? And maybe Mr. Logan can come up, and if he can remember some of the discussions that were occurring.
From my recollection, the main concern was it's still a residential area, and so to put industrial right in the middle of it wasn't a good idea. That was consensus of what the Planning Commission came up with.
Thank you, Alderman Coates. That's exactly what I was going to say, is that this is a residential district and there's not been any type of businesses such as this located in this area.
If I'm remembering correctly, it would cut that property into like an L shape on the back side. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's hard to know exactly, but if it was surveyed and then subdivided, it would have been kind of an odd arrangement back there.
Any other questions or conversation about this?
Thank you, Bo.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to number 6, first reading ordinance 2021-24. An ordinance to amend the City of Laverne zoning ordinance by changing the official zoning map for a portion of tax map 15 parcels 13.01 consisting of approximately 0.89 acres located at the rear of 5001 Murfreesboro Road from a C2 Highway Service Commercial Zoning District to a C3 Neighborhood Service Commercial Zoning District. This received a favorable recommendation from the Planning Commission on July 27, 2021. A public hearing will be held on September 7th, 2021 at 6:30. Does anyone have any questions about this from your packet? This is putting it's rezoning a piece of property in between the townhomes and KFC, so right behind the KFC, from a C2 to a C3. And if memory serves from Planning Commission, it is going to have commercial on the bottom and residential on the top. I believe I was out for that vote with COVID, but Alderman Coates, do you want to talk any about this from a Planning Commission standpoint?
Certainly. I mean, it's a very difficult piece of property due to the waterway at the back of the property, and so it was been designed several different ways, but this was the best design that the Planning Commission worked with the developer and the owner on it to make it work. It is a live-play unit. As you can see, there'll be effectively three buildings or 3 stores. Downstairs will be for business, and upstairs will be for residential. And the reason why the exit is on the right side of the property, because it lines up with the present exit on the opposite side of the road. They had initially planned to put some driveway not in line, and it's a very difficult junction there in the morning. A lot of traffic coming in and out of there, especially when KFC's open, the bank's open. So this was the best location for the entrance, and it's the end thing these days. It appears to be the live-work building, and that's why the Planning Commission come back with a favourable recommendation.
How close will that make the back of that to that creek?
It's, just look at the drawing here, 20, 25, 30 feet maybe from top of the bank. But that's why the cars are actually it's designed to have a garage where the cars fit inside the building itself.
Now, if that gets rezoned and they bring some businesses in, are we gonna be able to dictate what kind of business we don't want there, or?
It's privately owned, so technically they would have to comply with the zoning that they've put in for. So yes, the Planning Commission will have a say of how the building will be built. As far as what goes in there is driven by our ordinances as they're presently written.
Correct. It's not like the PDRs that
Right.
we've had where you can exclude or include specific businesses. This is still falls under one of our regular zones. So this would fall under the C3 zone.
So we can't dictate what can and can't come there?
As long as it meets the requirements of C3, it would be an allowed use at that location.
That's a congested area.
Any other questions about this item?
I guess the big question would be, what would be the difference? Might explain to the people, what would be the difference between the difference between one and the other? A lot of people don't understand the difference in zoning. That would be most people's question if they did have a question. You know, it's zoned one way now. If you change it to another zone, what would be the difference?
Mr. Mayor, I suggest we have the applicant's engineer here. He may want to step up and give us some information.
Either that or Mr. Logan, can you come up and just explain to us the difference between C2 and C3 when it comes to types of businesses allowed?
Sure, thank you. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Alderman. So C2 is a general highway service commercial district, so it's when you look in the ordinance, it actually says highway service for C2. So it is going to allow a wide array, just about anything you could think of in a commercial sense. Those uses are going to be allowed in C2. So C3 is a neighborhood commercial district, and it's a very tight scope of uses. So you could have like a professional office, like an engineer, architect's office. You could have a small coffee shop, cafe, bakery. Believe there's only 6 uses allowed by right in C3, and there's about 29 allowed uses in C2. So you're talking 6 uses in C3 versus about 30 in C2. It's a very limited scope in C3, so there's not a lot that can go in there.
So you said commercial on the bottom, apartments on the top, or whatever? What'd you say?
Correct,
Yes, residential on top, and then
Resident, so how much residential would that be? How many units?
I believe they're proposing a total of 3 residential units. Just a total of 3, with 2-car garages for each. So not a lot of units.
So just 3 additional condos, apartments, whatever they are?
Correct. 3 dwellings, yeah.
3 dwellings.
3 dwellings, but they're not gonna be single family because this is upper story residential and lower story commercial. So they're not gonna be houses.
And I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how many more living spaces and how much more traffic and how much more people is going to occupy up on top?
Well, with 3 dwelling units, it's not a great amount of change. There wasn't any traffic study that was even required because it's so small. It's such a small development, so there was no traffic study. If it was generating a large volume of traffic, that would have been required at Planning Commission. So it's fairly small.
One of the big difference between C2 and C3, C2 automobile service is required in C2. In C3, they couldn't put a gas station or a tire repair shop or a muffler
That is
shop.
correct. The
So-
auto
so
repair
you'll-
stuff is
You'll have a
not
little
allowed.
bit better clientele, what they say, a cleaner clientele.
That's correct.
That's
No,
what I wanted to explain. I knew it was a big difference between C2 and C3. C3 is more professional, like dentist office, doctor's office, chiropractor. C2 is more like muffler repair, tire shop, filling station, blah, blah, blah.
correct, yeah.
Tobacco, cigarettes?
Correct. That's all C2 type uses.
So we couldn't have that in C3.
It's a wide range, because even like your restaurants fall into C2.
I
So,
mean, let's face it, if we put another tobacco or cigarette place, we're gonna be hung, you know?
Well, they could put a tobacco and cigarette place right there now, about right.
Yeah, there's one right across the street, that's what I'm saying,
But
but
now in C2, they can put a tobacco shop in C2, so.
That's
we're
what I'm
not
saying, but by
gaining
right
or giving
currently in their
anything
current
away.
zoning, if they wanted to put a tobacco and beer, if they got a beer license, they could. So this zoning isn't gonna change. Well, it would actually remove that from it, cause I don't know that
On
a beer
general,
store is allowed in C3.
on general,
don't
anytime
know.
you step up, like from 2 to 3, you get more stricter, right?
Well, in this instance, it gets a lot stricter. I don't know if that's always true, but
any other questions?
Would you like for me to read the uses aloud?
Sure, if you have that pulled up.
what is it?
He's going to read the uses aloud.
I'm gonna take my mask off so people can hear me better. It says in the C3 Neighborhood Service Business District, the following uses and their accessory uses are permitted. Number 1, generally recognized retail business, which supplies commodities on the premises for persons residing in adjacent residential areas such as groceries, meats, dairy products, baked goods, or other foods, cafes, drugs, dry goods, and notions or hardware and gas stations. Number 2, personal service establishments, which performs services on the premises such as repair shops, in parentheses, radio, television, shoe, etc., beauty parlors or barber shops, and self-service laundries. Talks about signs, talks about upper story residential dwellings, and then number 5 is convenience store sales. So those are the only uses that are allowed in the C3 zone.
So, still sort of similar to C2. Although C2 has more.
All right, thank you, Bo, that's very informative.
thank you.
First reading ordinance 2021-25, an ordinance to amend Title 8, Chapter 1 of the Laverne Municipal Code regarding intoxicating liquors - package stores. Bless you. Now, the state has made some changes in the law regarding package liquor stores. They no longer allow for license transfers, and the application process has changed. Of course, curbside pickup is now law. It's now allowed under law, so This ordinance puts our ordinances into compliance with the new state laws. Is there any questions? Seeing none. Moving on to first reading ordinance 2021-26, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2021-2022 general fund budget. This budget allows for the allocations of the following items. You've got $100,000 for City Hall buildings. You've got $80,000 for police transportation equipment, and then $45,000 under parks, machinery and equipment. So it's a total of $225,000. It'll come from the general fund reserves to pay for these additional expenditures. Is there any questions?
Which house is it on Stones River? It ain't the one that Chief Bees and them beat a hole in the roof, is it?
Not that one.
Not that one. Moving on to first reading ordinance 2021-27, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2021-2022 drug fund budget. And this is $120,000 that'll come from the drug fund reserves to pay for these expenditures, and it's the funds will be used to purchase 3 Tahoes that were budgeted in last year's budget, but they didn't come in until the end of June. Any questions? Moving on to number 10, Resolution 2021-21, a resolution to acquire easements for the Upper Chaney Woods Interceptor sewer line project by eminent domain. There are multiple easements that still need to be acquired for this project. This resolution will give the city attorney the authority to acquire these easements using eminent domain. And Evan, you can better explain this for the board and public.
Sure. As many of you probably already know, we have been in the process of trying to acquire easements for this particular project for various reasons also. Some of the easements have been easy to acquire, some of them have not been. There are still some that will still likely will be able to close on, but there are others that we probably will not be able to acquire for reasons such as if there's a lien on the property and the mortgage company won't respond to our request, things of that nature. We have a timeline when we want to start the project. So authorizing me to file suit and acquire by eminent domain will simply allow me to make the determination. If the property's not going to close in a reasonable amount of time, then I can file suit and get the easement pretty quickly. And so that's what the resolution does.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, moving on to Resolution 2021-22. A resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract for the sale and lease of the stormwater building located at 5175 Murfreesboro Road. The city has received an offer for the purchase of this building. Of course, we're in the process of finalizing the plans for the new public works facility. The funds from the sale of this property can be used towards the new construction. This contract will also contain provisions for lease back of the property until we can move out and into the new facility. And then we will, of course, we're in the process of having a appraisal done currently. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, moving on to number 12, Resolution 2021-23, a resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract for the sale and lease of the public works facility located at 148 International Boulevard. And again, this is a similar circumstance. We've received some inquiries about this, and just as before, the funds can be used for construction of the new facility. Is there any question? Moving on to 13, Resolution 2021-24, a resolution authorizing the City of Laverne to participate in the Public Entity Partners, Safety Partners Matching Grant Program. This is a 50% grant. It'll reimburse the city up to $5,000 for PEP, or for PPE equipment that's listed in your packet. The overall cost for the equipment is $17,860. So that will, if we receive that grant, we'll reduce that to $12,860. Does anyone have any questions? Moving on to number 14, Resolution 2021-25, a resolution authorizing the City of Laverne to participate in the Public Entity Partners James L. Richardson Driver Safety Matching Grant Program. And again, this is another 50-50 grant. City would be reimbursed $5,000. We've not designated what this will be used for, but we are working on that application currently. I know Kamisha's been doing a heck of a job with grants recently, where she stepped into that role, so it's another opportunity here to save some taxpayer dollars. Any questions?
So when you do a grant, you don't have to have a specific thing for it to go to. You can get money and hold it or use
Not
it
for
later?
this one specifically, no.
Okay.
Some you do, but, you know, this one you don't have to know exactly when you get the resolution approved.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to number 15, Resolution 2021-26, a resolution of the City of Laverne Board of Mayor and Aldermen to declare property owned by the city to be surplus to the city needs and directing disposal of the same. These are items from HR and Public Works. And again, this is normal. We do almost every month. Is there any questions?
I'm just curious about this. I've been meaning to ask you this for a long time. Does everything that we put on there, does it sell?
No.
Because I looked at some of these pictures, and some of this stuff's about a notch above a boat anchor.
That would be the other portion of this where it says directing disposal of the same.
What do we do with it if somebody don't buy it?
Sometimes we take it to the scrapyard
Okay.
and get whatever we can get out of that. If it's not worth it, it goes in the dumpster.
Yeah, some of that stuff Garland's got on there, I wouldn't,
Not to pick on your Garland, but
not, I see that. I was looking at those pictures and I thought, my goodness.
moving on to number 16, Resolution 2021-27, a resolution to authorize the mayor to execute severance agreements. This just goes along with existing where the mayor has the authority for hire, fire, promote, demote, and it would just add in there the ability to execute severance agreements whenever they're budgeted. Does anyone have any questions? Moving on to 16, appoint or remove committee members. First, we have the Laverne Industrial Development Board. We have 3 terms that expire on October 1st. All 3 members do still want to be on the board, and this is a board appointment, so of course, someone will make a motion and a second before voting. Then we have the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. We have 2 terms vacant. We have 1 applicant currently, and this is being advertised on Channel 3 and Facebook. So if you would like to serve, please get in your information. And then lastly, we've got the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. We've got 1 term vacant. We do have 1 applicant. We've been advertising that on Channel 3 and on Facebook, so if you are interested, feel free to apply. Moving on to our first discussion item, that would be the fee schedule, which is in front of you. We've been discussing this now for about 1.5 years, 2 years, about switching over to a fee schedule and removing all of the individual fees from our ordinances and from our zoning. So Kyle, I know you have been spending a lot of time, as well as Juliet, on this. If one of the 2 of y'all would like to lead this.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Alderman, basically what we've got in front of you is we've put together a list of all the fees that are currently in, I would just say municipal code, but it's also, there's some resolutions in here, there's some ordinances that just different things. There's also the impact fee ordinance and others that are all in here. So what we've done is created a list of all the fees. So if you look to the left of the page, you will see basically what the fee is for. The next column would be the 2021, 2022, which, you know, when we continually do this, that year will change, but that's going to be the current year. And then the next column will be the prior fiscal year of what the fees are, that way, just for comparison purposes. That way, if, you know, if it raises or lowers, just depending on what the board chooses at budget time, then you'll have that for comparison. The last column is the municipal code or ordinance, and there's also some subdivision regulations. I think there's 2 or 3 fees that are from the subregs, which this board, and we'll have to figure that out in the future, this board has the ability to set fees, but as far as the planning commission, they have the authority to do resolutions for these subregs. So you kind of more or less would let the planning commission throughout the fiscal year update those fees, and then at budget time, you would pretty much just ratify with the adoption of this fee schedule. This kind of started when we was going to look at updating, you know, like in the past year and a half or so, we updated the impact fees. We had said at that point in time, we wanted to also update the tap fees and the building permit fees. So some of those fees in here, and planning has got a lot of fees that have changed. For instance, the codes department, we went on a building permit fee. What we're proposing in here is a square footage cost, as opposed to what we previously had was a valuation. And it makes it a whole lot easier, I think, as far as discussing this with Randolph. And of course, other cities use the square footage cost. That's seems to be an easier way, less argument of basically when you come in to pull a permit, the square footage is the square footage and this is the cost. So the biggest thing we wanted to do is get this out tonight to where you can review over this. If there's any fees that you want to discuss with the department heads, such as the building or the planning or water sewer, if you'll reach out to those department heads, pretty much we can, at this point in time when we adopt this, if we need to change some fees, we can. And that's what we're proposing, like I said, on the building permit fees. I know Deets has got the tap fees, it's changed a little bit. And all the department heads have basically, if they are suggesting or asking for a change, they have done research for the past year and a half of looking at other cities, communities to see, one, what is an appropriate cost, and also are we in line with other municipalities. So I know they put a lot of work into it. However, I know you sitting on this board, you may look at some fees and think, well, that's not near enough. We need to go higher. If that is the case, that's fine. But if you'll just get with the board members over the next month, or the department heads over next month, and we will bring this back next month, basically, hopefully for a vote. The other thing we're going to have to do in the meantime, while these fees they're pulled out and in this fee schedule, we're going to have to, which is going to be a collection of myself, Bruce, and Juliet also on revising all the municipal code, the text language to refer back to the fee schedule. So there is going to be a very long ordinance at that point in time to revise basically the whole municipal code, because that's, if you'll look, or when you get to looking, you'll see they're spread out all over the place. So if you got any questions, I guess I'll try to answer them. And if you got any specific departments you want to discuss some of the fees with, I mean, we can either do it tonight, or if you want to be able to review through it, it'd probably be better to have a lot of questions at the next workshop.
I'm just glad to see this. I know we've spoken about it, and we can get to the point where, just like with our impact fees, we can adopt these each year with the budget, and it's in front of us every year. So there's none of this, it waits 22 years to get updated, or they're sorely out of date. We can review them every year and make sure that we have accurate information. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm sure I will, but not right now.
Okay. Moving on to number 19, Fergus Road traffic issues. Adam or Alderman Coates, would y'all like to kick this off? I know y'all been working on this quite a bit.
Yeah, you asked us to come up with some options, and so I sat down with Adam and come up with what you got in front of you, and we just obviously concerned about the safety and speed of the road, and obviously the cost as well, but I'm sure Adam wants to chirp in, he can give his piece as well.
Yeah, mayor, vice mayor, board. Basically, we looked at 4 options. There were some other options that were discussed that this didn't work out due to geometry or, potentially taking someone's yard, house, etc. So the theoretically most viable options were laid out. There's obviously this first page, which kind of shows everything. Then the next few pages will go through different options. The first option we looked at was a mini roundabout at Fergus and Heritage Circle. FHWA figures these at between about 150, 250,000 per installation for the relatively small ones. The good news is that because this intersection is basically square, it lines up very well. We wouldn't have a whole lot of right-of-way take. We wouldn't be taking anybody's yard. The nice thing about these mini roundabouts is they do act as a form of traffic control. They're easily mountable by, fire apparatus, etc. They don't have like a hard center. They're typically mountable throughout, so if someone was coming through in a hurry, they could still traverse it. But they do offer a little bit of speed control, just kind of due to the nature of it. Nobody wants to take the hard path through the center when they can just kind of swerve around it. The next option we looked at was a mini roundabout at the intersection of, potential intersection of Fergus, George Thomas, and Jones Mill. That one is a little more challenging, mostly because nothing's really around 90 or 70. The getting it to actually kind of draw that was challenging in a lot of ways. AutoCAD was not happy with my decision making. But the alignment sort of did finally work out to get where it is there, and you will note that at least one person would lose most of their yard, another person's going to lose their house if we decide to, pursue that. It would square up, well, not square up, but basically eliminate one intersection and turn it into one 4-way intersection. The geometry on that one's just challenging all the way around. To make the alignment work, we would have to do some weird stuff. And when engineers say weird stuff, just hear expensive. But the other option there, of course, is we could cut off George Thomas, basically dead end that street, and either make another mini roundabout at the intersection of Jones, which would just be 3-legged. That does once again offer that option of speed control, because you can't really take that at warp speed. It would definitely be a 30-mile-per-hour intersection. Once again, the cost would go down on that because we're not really buying a lot of right-of-way, all that other fun stuff. So that option's at $150,000, $250,000. Option 3 was the realignment of Hollandale Road. It's a relatively short section, 958 feet. Basically, we'd bring that roadway down, make it tee up, essentially with Sand Hill Road, make that a 4-way intersection. Don't think it would meet warrants currently for signalization. That's just my feeling. Once, Minerva Village and Sand Hill Village and all the other villages kind of come online, it might get a little closer to meeting warrants, but right now, it probably wouldn't. We could plumb it for a future signal, basically make it a 4-way stop. What you gain with this is some enhanced sight distance. You also eliminate one intersection, so people will be stopping less. That tends to make traffic move a little bit slower. The intersection at Hollandale is also not great. The sight distance is a little weird, is the best way to put it. It does technically meet, the basic standards for a local roadway, but not really a collector roadway. And of course, the option 4, which would be very, very hard to show in 2D, is basically just widening the curve that is south of Hollandale, north of Jones Mill. Because there's basically, we go from a urban section to a rural section. In the urban section, we have approximately 24 feet of pavement. Once we hit the rural section, it goes down to about 21 feet.
There's no shoulders, so basically any bad decision a driver makes is pretty instantly punished because they fall off the road and have a hard time recovering. So by widening that, probably 6 feet total, and basically putting a little bit of super elevation in the curve, we could probably do away with a lot of those run off the road incidents in this section. Once again, that's relatively cheap because it's such a short section. So those are really the four that made semi-economic sense and seemed doable. Also, I would want to point out that, if we were to seriously consider, tackling some of these road problems on Fergus, I would probably want to look at additionally just doing a sidewalk down the whole thing, just for, the interest of pedestrian traffic and all that. But that's kind of the big overview of some of the options we could do. There's some minor low-hanging fruit we could put out there. Obviously, like the flashing speed signs, that type of thing will help with speeding to a certain degree, but these are the structural components we could pursue.
Thoughts?
Well, I don't think that, the roundabout at George Thomas is even up for discussion, because obviously we can't take people's homes and yards. That'd be pretty rough. I don't know, we're back to square one as far as what's the best. I like the idea of doing away with George Thomas and putting a mini circle at Heritage. Kind of like that, because people getting out of there, Jones Mill, still going to be a hard thing. So I don't, man.
Alderman Waldron?
Well, I like the Hollandale moved over to Sand Hill. I think that's probably a no-brainer. Working on that sharp curve right there, that's something that needs to be done. Down at Jones Mill and down there, I wouldn't be totally against it if the people on George Thomas could have a easy access out of there. Jean Drive, it's a narrow street with no sidewalks, and Minerva, I think Minerva's gradually going to go on over to Sand Hill. That would be another avenue to go, but that would, doing away with George Thomas on Fergus, that would put a lot more traffic, which is going to be probably a lot of traffic on Jean Drive. If Jean Drive was improved maybe a little bit, I think that would win more of the residents in that area. That's another road that's it's narrow and it's got deep at places fall-offs on it, and no sidewalks on each side. I think if you do improvements in a area, if you give the people something other than just blocking off a road and a roundabout, if you go within a circle and give the people maybe sidewalks, you give it and take it. I think it'd be a better sale to the residents than other than just blocking it off and let them fend for themselves.
Alderman Coates?
Thought they want some options, so we just thought we'd try and put some ideas together. Obviously, my comment is I'm very pro roundabout, as people know. It does ease the traffic, it gives you flow, it gives you speed control, and sometimes you got to I think we have to make a move of getting this done right and get it done once and be done with it. We've been messing with this road for quite a few years now. We've got to get something done. We have additional homes coming out in the area off Jones Mill Road, additional homes coming off from Lake Forest area, so it's only going to get worse. So, as you say, this is the time to do it.
Adam, have you spoken to the people that own that property right there on the right in the curve going towards Dollar General? I was just thinking, you know, if you do a little roundabout there at Heritage and you could, if he would let us clear that land out where people could see what's oncoming on the other side of that curve, because you could, you know, if those trees weren't there, you could see right up through there.
I contacted the owner of the property where they're showing Hollandale coming across Sand Hill. At this point in time, they're not interested in selling any property. However, I think in the past, and this is probably 20 years ago, the city was discussing this same curve and discussing some way to improve that. And I think at that point in time, they were on board with doing some improvements with the curve. So I think they would be more open to, you know, if there was something on the curve that would help, because like what you're saying, as far as clearing it out, you know, his driveway's right there and he's got to pull out right there at that curve. So, I think that'd be more for that, but as of right now, he's not interested. But there again, if this is something the board wants to pursue, there's other avenues, and we can have discussion at that point of, you know, are you interested, or are you just completely against it?
So if you straighten that curve out from where you're talking about and the guy would be interested, it would pretty much take that one home, that last home on the right there as you enter the curve. Is that correct?
You probably would, and I haven't talked to the homeowner, but that's part of the issue is, I think with what this property owner's willing to do, it would affect that other small lot, and you'd be taking that home. And if the board's not willing to do that, then there's no sense of discussing with this property owner really what to do with the curve.
Adam, how much, if you're gonna put a sidewalk going down one side of Fergus, what I think you said, were you alluding to one side or both sides?
We would probably, in this case, only do one side, just because honestly, it's easier and cheaper.
And how much frontage for yards if a combination of these were done that included the as far as the widening of the curve, but how much would people lose of their front yards?
Well, that's a sort of complicated question in the fact that most people feel that the right-of-way is their front yard. In fact, the right-of-way belongs to the city, so everywhere there's a curb, if we do our standard, 2 feet off the back of the curb, put the sidewalk in, most of the way we have 50 feet of right-of-way, we have a 24-foot wide road section, so we can accommodate the right-of-way, accommodate the sidewalk within the right-of-way. That said, people are still gonna feel like we took their yard because it was grass, 5 months ago or however long it takes us to do the project. As far as us actually having to go out and acquire anything to do most of this, other than the option at Jones Mill and George Thomas, most of this would be accomplished within the right-of-way outside of the alignment, of course.
Does that include Fergus from basically where the sidewalk ends at Walmart?
Yes.
Down to, I would say Dollar General or even a little bit past that?
Yep. The only place we would probably really have to look into acquiring some right-of-way might be in the curve, depending on how the geometry kind of works out for us. The curve is not currently super elevated, and the curve radius is roughly 225 feet, which is the barest of the bare minimum for the speed of roadway. If we added, even a 2-inch super elevation on it, it would feel much more comfortable, plus some shoulders would make it safer. Most of that can be accomplished within the right-of-way, so if we were to pursue, strongly sidewalks the length of it, the roundabout that we discussed at Heritage Circle and Fergus, potentially the roundabout at Jones Mill, your right-of-way take for the entire length of it would be firmly under a half acre, I would suspect.
Okay. So so that possibility is there then for the future. So,
Yeah, I think the only thing that we might get sideways on the projects is most of the electric poles are right in the right of way. So we'll be the sidewalk might not be as straight as we'd like, because we'll be kind of ducking and diving on that, but that'd be about the only thing I can think of immediately that would be against us on that.
how is the fee in lieu of fund? I know we've had quite a bit where once the planning commission raised the fee in lieu of, pretty much most projects were doing sidewalks. So how does that fund look?
Well, and I don't know if it delivered today, but I think we had a $36,000 check that was supposed to come in today for fee in lieu. The last time I looked at it, it was around the 100,000-ish mark. It could be significantly higher. I haven't really checked on it lately because we haven't, other than our CMAQ funding, we haven't pursued sidewalk projects with any seriousness as of late. So I can check with Phyllis and get that back to the board.
Okay, because that would be something that we could utilize potentially with this project as well.
So is it fair to say you'll be back next month with some more ideas?
I'm kind of tapped out on ideas. It's more of let's if you guys want to pick some options.
It's at this point, here's the ideas that have been come up with, and what do we as a board want to pursue? Do we want to pursue any one or combination? I would personally feel that a combination of these, I don't think there's any one-trick pony that's going to solve anything, and I personally would like to see sidewalks included with this going down Fergus. We have a lot of foot traffic already going down it, so if we're going to make the road, if our goal is to try to make the road safer, at the same time, let's make it safer for pedestrian walkways as well.
I would concur with that. That just makes sense, because it does help.
So what's your two picks?
Well, my picks are going to be the Heritage Circle mini roundabout. I would say the number 4, which would widen the curve. And then also, that's widens the curve south of Hollandale, north of Jones Mill. And then the realignment as well with Hollandale Road. That one just makes sense, period. It turns that into a 4-way stop instead of having 2 3-way stops stacked on top of each other. We just, a couple of years ago, passed to realign Center Point and Charter because you had 2 3-way stops that were stacked on top of each other. We all discussed it. Wasn't the safest environment. Well, this is the exact same situation to me.
So if we do the Hollandale thing, do you think that the people that live out Morningside and out in there could get used to going up Morningside and coming down Hollandale instead of trying to fight that? Well, right there's a prime example. Instead of fighting Jones's Mill Road, huh?
I don't go out there.
So you go out Hollandale?
Yes.
You think you could get your neighbors used to that?
I got my kids used to it, trying to get some neighbors used to it.
Glenn over here's a fan too.
I come out Morningside too.
Yeah, Glenn,
Mornings.
Glenn's the same way, yeah.
At home, I go down and turn on Jones Mill, but that's an easier turn than.
Yeah, that's a right-hand turn versus a left-hand out. Yeah.
I like that, The
Okay.
3 scenarios myself, I can't get aboard on this taking these people's property and homes. I can't get on that, and that big old intersection right there at Heritage is a huge intersection.
Alderman Coates, you were gonna weigh in?
Yeah, my comment is, I mean, I understand the good idea to realign, but then the issue would be it'd be a big racetrack from that junction down to Jones Mill Road unless we do something with Jones Mill Road. Which is gonna increase the speed, I think, coming down that hill. So, for me, I mean, just looking at, effectively, my comment would be to do option 1 through 4, and let's just tackle to see what we can do with some of these homes and what actually we need to figure out how much property we need to take, if any.
Well, let me ask this question when it comes to the Jones Mill roundabout. If you do the three-legged roundabout, Adam, is it still roughly the same geometry there that you're using in this this diagram for it?
No, so if we do just the three-legged roundabout, and basically because some of the vagaries with AutoCAD and how it works, I can only have one thing on one alignment. Essentially, you take one leg off what's shown, shift it south, and the only problem with that is you would essentially have an intersection right in one leg of that roundabout, which is a little hinky. I mean, we could maybe massage it to work, but it's one of those that's not 100% comfortable with it as it stands without survey data and everything to kind of make me be comfortable with it. The good thing about, if we do a three-legged three-legged roundabout, mini roundabout right there, relatively cheap, $150,000, $200,000-ish dollars, give or take. Do I think that the existing access at George Thomas could remain the same? Maybe. But about the best answer I can give you right now. I'd have to do some research on that one just because it's a unique scenario that I don't really like putting traffic immediately into a roundabout that doesn't have a leg on the roundabout, personally. It might be done somewhere else, but I would be unwilling to say it's super safe right now. That said, if you were willing to close George Thomas and allow them to access through Minerva, which that road's already built, it's there, it would be inconvenient for a few people on George Thomas, no doubt, but not super inconvenient, I don't guess. But I don't live out there, so my opinion's a little biased.
Are you talking about closing off the George Thomas and then moving the roundabout down to Jones Mill and won't have to take nobody's property and stuff?
That was one of the options that he provided. And so, or I would say, if anything, it might take less property. I think regardless, it's going to take some property, but how much is that's what we would need a survey for.
I mean, if we just go to the three-legged roundabout, I would be comfortable saying we'd be maybe 0.2 acres, 0.1 acres. We definitely wouldn't be taking anybody's house. We might take a little bit of somebody's yard, but not a lot.
Did you say you wasn't a fan of that? What'd you say?
I'm not a fan of it as drawn.
Okay.
And mostly because taking houses and the geometry to make this thing work is interesting, to say the least. Mostly the only question, like leaving George Thomas open and having the three-legged roundabout, I really have to do some research on it just to see if I think it's viable, because I'm not.
I don't think George Thomas needs to be open if you're gonna do three-legged, yeah.
Well, that's kind of where I'm at, but if you did want to keep it open, I'd have to do some research just to see kind of what other places have done and what the best guidance is.
I think kind of where we're at, though, is best scenario right now would be for Adam to reach out to a consultant, which I know Reagan Smith's been on here several times for some road projects, would be to go ahead and get a proposal from them to bring back to this board for approval, to start at least the design. I think he's got some, the parameters of what we can tell them or what we're looking for. They can give us a good proposal. We can bring back some options. If we have to revise their proposal, we can. But at this point, I think that's kind of where we're at, would be getting a proposal from a consultant. And of course, then we'll have to do a budget amendment because this is not something that was budgeted. So we can either wait and do this the next fiscal year, get it started, or if you want to go ahead and get it started, then we'll just get that proposal and also present a budget amendment.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got some homework to do to get things rolling.
I see Reagan Smith nodding in the audience, so they'll be fine.
Okay. Okay,
The curve on, Hollandale by the other side of the cemetery, moving that road to line it up with Sand Hill, it may soften that curve. That's a kind of a wicked curve right there. Yeah, that might soften that curve, but that'd be something we need to look at. And number two, if we got a 25-foot right-of-way or so far on, Fergus, if we use some of that right-of-way, then we're gonna have to buy more right-of-way. We can't have zero right-of-way. You're talking about using the right-of-way. If we use 15 foot of right-of-way, then we've got to buy 15 more foot of right-of-way. That's the way I'm seeing it, unless I'm looking at a wrong angle.
Your angle might be a little bit suspect. The city owns the right of way all the way out, so we can
I know,
use
but
all
if
of
you
it
use
up.
that up,
But we don't have to
don't we
buy any
need-
extra.
Don't we need, if we got 20, on a 2-lane road, city road, if we got a 25 foot, just say it's a 25-foot right of way, and if we use 20 foot of it, that means 5 foot right of ways. Don't we need to keep it a 25-foot right of way?
No, we have, on this particular road, we have roughly 25 foot of road, actual hardball. Then we have 50 feet of right of way, so we have
That's from
20.
the center of the road, that's from the center of the road.
No, it's from right of way edge to right of way
Okay.
edge. So you're thinking from center line, but
Okay.
we got 25 foot of space to play with basically, and
If we use that up, we don't need to replace it.
no, we don't.
Okay, well, that's what my one question is. Has anybody talked to them people that has the houses on the corner of Jones Mill and Fergus to see if they're interested in selling it?
So typically, without instructions from y'all, am unwilling to do that. If you want me to ask them, I can.
Well, I mean, that would probably be key of what we're gonna do if we could get that right away. Who knows, they might not wanna sell it, or they might say, yeah, we'll sell it. I think before we go spending a whole lot of money on engineering, we need to get our ducks in a row.
Most of the time, though, we would do the engineering first to figure out what property we need to go discuss with, because if you just go up and down the street asking different ones if they're willing to sell or not, you may be talking to somebody that doesn't even need to, you won't even have the conversation we have because their property wouldn't be affected. So the first part of it would be to get, like I said a while ago, is to get a proposal from a consultant, bring back some options. They may come up with some different ideas that we're not thinking of. Once they do a survey and actually start designing some stuff, some of the things that may fit, because you got to look at them using aerial photographs and some property lines that are probably not survey grade, and some of the things that may look like they fit may not. Some of the things that may look like it's tight right now, it may fit easily. So the best thing to do is, get a proposal.
If that's the case, I'd like to see a Plan A, a Plan B, and a Plan C. But if we're gonna do something, we need to do it right, because, the way the things are developing out there, we need to look at a 20-year, a plan, not just fix what's probably now, let's fix it for the next 20 years. And that bad curve right to the side of the cemetery on Hollandale, if moving that road over to line it up with Sand Hill, if that will soften that wicked curve right there, that might solve that problem. But if not, we need to look at some issues on that curve, because that curve is sort of a tight curve. It's not hardly as tight as Fergus Road curve, but it's got a little bite to it.
and that's what Kyle was saying, is that we would get with Reagan Smith, get them to put together some options for us, and let them come back to this board with that.
Yeah, but I like to see a plan, Plan A, a Plan B, and a Plan C, give us something to look at other than just a cookie cutter disposal.
So once those people come out, Kyle, they'll be able to tell us if there's enough space to do what we want to do. If we cut off George Thomas, do a mini
Yeah, it's the same.
Circle, they'll be able to tell us, we don't have to take nobody's
Well, it's
property.
essentially the same thing's being done on South Waldron. Basically, we're entering into a contract with Reagan Smith. They'll come out, they'll survey, they'll start doing the design work at different stages. They'll meet with Adam to make sure they're going down the right path and getting what the city wants. If there's any questions, that's going to be, major cost changers, that's not something that's a definite answer, we'll bring back to the board and show you option A and B and get direction from y'all before we go further. But it's the same thing we would do here is basically, they've got to do a survey first, they've got to start doing preliminary design, they'll meet with Adam. Some of they're sitting here listening if we do use them, they're hearing your comments, so they'll have a good idea of what kind of put together. Then they can, if there is some options, they can bring back, okay, here's option A, here's option B, or it may be just strictly by engineering design. There's really no options other than this one path, and
Right.
that's what you just go with if you're wanting to fix the road. So the biggest thing I think come down to this whole thing is gonna be budget, and we just need to get a proposal, amend the budget, get them to start work on it, and then if there is an option A, B, or C, then we can bring it in front of this board and let y'all choose which path to move forward.
And another thing, the cost of it, I'd like to see, something, if it's, maybe do an assess thing on maybe, letting, putting a deal on it, like on the developers, like the city done out there on the sewer going to the, out Walden Road. They paid up front, but they had a assess fee for anybody that built, let the builders pay for the upgrade, because, they're the ones that's, that's, and the bottom line is causing us to upgrade the roads.
You're talking about a special assessment zone.
uh-huh.
And we
And
can only
what
have
you've
those
currently
for a
got,
limited
that's-
amount of time, but that's a
but one
highly
thing-
developed area
I
already.
don't think
But one thing you gotta look at is what you're saying is the additional traffic's causing us to do this project. Well, that's what you passed on the impact fees. So that would be something on a yearly basis that we're talking about on the fee schedule. If you feel that fee needs to be upped, then you can do that. But that's what the impact fees for roads is going towards, is these road projects that developments, whenever they come in and the city has to do a road project, that's what it's covering. So,
Thank you, sir. Moving on to number 20, discussion, create a Beautification and Arts Advisory Commission. This is actually one that I requested be added to the agenda, and I would like us to set up a quarterly advisory committee that is dedicated to the beautification of the city and bringing arts in, and primarily focus that with city properties, items that we own, that we control. I've already said it multiple times before, but I would love to see, and I've spoken with the Rutherford County Arts Alliance, I'd love to see a mural right here on the other side of City Hall, this brick wall right outside, celebrating our diversity. We're probably one of the most diverse areas for Rutherford County. But we have other opportunities to bring arts and beautification to this city. In some ways, we can partner with private industry, such as the mural over by the IC Corporation on their water tower. So there's multiple opportunities, and I would like to see a Beautification and Arts Advisory Commission set up. It would meet quarterly. It would fall under, I foresee it falling under Parks and Rec. You're welcome, David. I know you love me for that. But it would include residents, and I would say we would include at least one representative from the County Arts Alliance as well. So what are your thoughts?
You're talking like a 5, 6, 7-person committee meets just like we normally do, and let them,
It would meet quarterly,
oh, okay.
and they would, their focus would be beautification for the city and integrating arts into our city.
And how would they be chosen?
Well, it would fall similar to how most of our other boards are. We would set up all the same criteria, and then open it up for applications.
That's, you know, you find some people that's willing to put in the time that know what they're doing, because God knows. Because we, speaking of beautification, what's the deal with the log cabin?
Well, that's separate from this, so we need it.
I'm just picking on David.
We need to stay on topic here, so,
Yeah, as long as we get people that's got an eye for that stuff.
I think it's a good idea. I think let's move forward with it. I think it's a good idea for the city.
Lord
to-
knows I don't.
now I know before, in the past, we've had a beautification committee that was later dissolved, and then I don't believe we've ever had an arts commission at all. But, any other thoughts? Okay, moving on to mayor and alderman comments. Alderman Waldron.
I know, people's probably tired of me bringing this up, but, one thing, you know, your pets, you know, I know it's cooling down outside, but, you know, we still have hot days, and I was outside a lot today, and if you're out in the sun, you get hot. Make sure your pets has got fresh water and ample shade. What I hate to see is go down the road and see a dog chained in the backyard and no dog house, but, you know, make sure they got shade and ample water, and check on the elderly. You know, it's hot outside, and I caught myself 2 or 3 times in the last 2 or 3 days not paying attention to the school buses of the school children on the side of the street. And, you know, I'm just urging people, and I'm guilty, you know, kids is on the side of the street and the bus is just watch out for them. I'm guilty. I've almost slapped myself 2 or 3 times, you know, just not paying attention because I'm not used to them being there. And it's a great time. It's not real hot. It's a great time to check you outside of your house to winterize it. And a lot of you heat and air people, this time of the year is not real busy. It's a good time to check your HVAC system because, you know, when it's real hot and real cold, you can't get nobody out there to work on them. And that's about all I got. Thank you.
Alderman Coates.
I'd like to wish everyone a happy and safe Labor Day. And also, coming up in a few weekends, we have Old Timers Day, and I'd like to see everyone come out and have a good time.
Vice Mayor No?
I got nothing.
Wonderful. Well, just like Alderman Coates mentioned, we've got Old Timers Festival coming up on the 18th. We have a kickoff concert on the 17th, so make sure to add it to your calendar, come out, and let's celebrate. Please remember to keep all the people suffering from the effects of Hurricane Ida, as it has now moved to the northeast and is causing tornadoes and floods, some of those storms. Let's remember everyone throughout this whole area that's affected in our prayers. And then last but not least, please remember we are still in the midst of a pandemic. COVID is resurging all across the country. Hopefully we're going to see some numbers declining soon, but for right now we're getting closer and closer to the Rutherford County's high. So let's make sure that we do, you know, the safe thing, whether it's social distancing, whether it's making sure that we're washing our hands, and as you can see here from the video, we're all in face masks. So let's just do our part and help keep each other safe. With that, call this meeting adjourned.
Good.